Once again, good morning and welcome to our Gen Math class today. Today, we are going to tackle the second to the last lesson. We're almost done with the semester and we're almost done with our lessons. We are now in chapter 5, lesson 3, and it's about forms of conditional proposition. Let's start by reciting today's memory verse. It's found in Isaiah 41 verse 12. It says, 41 verse 21. It says, set forth your case, says the Lord. Bring your proofs, says the King of Jacob. Your boosters is on reflecting on this quote. It's about the equivalence of God's children. The quote says, the ground is level at the foot of the cross. You need to write your personal reflection about this quote. Hope you'll take time to answer your MVCA boosters because that's an extra of 5 points. If you see, many of you got good grades, and actually one of that is a big thanks to the MVCA boosters. So take time to answer your MVCA boosters. At the end of today's class, we'll be able to illustrate the different forms of conditional propositions. Now, let's start by doing the transformers activity. I have here a sentence, and you need to write it in an if-then form. Let's start. Prepare your chat boxes. The first one is congruent angles will have the same angle measurement. Now, how are we going to write this in an if-then statement? There. Give me a moment. I'll write a sample. Say, if angles are congruent, then they have the same angle measurement. That's it. That's a sample for the first one. If angles are congruent, then they have the same angle measurements. How about number 2? Ready? I will eat ice cream on a sunny day. Your chat boxes. Type your answer. I will eat ice cream on a sunny day. Write it in an if-then form. How will you write it in if-then form? I'll start typing. Ready? If it is sunny, then I will eat ice cream. If I eat ice cream, that it's on a sunny day. Yes, it's also correct. If it's sunny, then I will eat ice cream. Next, number 3, a champion is afraid of losing. A champion is afraid of losing. Can you write it in an if-then form? A champion is afraid of losing. Ready in your chat boxes? Any answers? A champion is afraid of losing. If you are a champion, then you are afraid of losing. Very good. Oh, sorry. I'm typing in the wrong box. Next, the next one, number 4. Perpendicular lines form right angles. Perpendicular lines form right angles. Ready? Start typing. Perpendicular lines form right angles. Write it in an if-then form. I have here an answer. If lines are perpendicular, very good, then they form right angles. Here, if you notice, the noun is in the hypothesis part, while the pronoun they is in the conclusion part. Di siya pwedeng, if they are perpendicular, then the lines form right angles. No, the pronoun should be in the conclusion part. Very good. The last one, two angles that form a linear pair are supplementary. Again, two angles that form a linear pair are supplementary. Ready? In your chat box. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. Very good. Now, if you notice, all of these propositions are in the if-then format. We call these conditional propositions. Remember, our compound propositions can be a conjunction, disjunction, conditional, biconditional, and negation. And for our examples here, they are in the if-then format. Therefore, we call them, again, we call them conditional propositions. This morning, we are going to deal on more forms of conditional propositions. Let's start. But I need to erase. Wait first. There. Now, what is a conditional statement? A conditional statement has two parts. We have the hypothesis, the if part, the hypothesis or the antecedent, and the conclusion part, the then, is called the consequent. In symbols, if we have if P then Q, then we write it as P arrow Q. Again, the if part is called the hypothesis or the antecedent, while the conclusion part, the then part, is called the conclusion or the consequent. Now, we have four forms of conditional proposition. The first is the usual. If P, then Q. That's the conditional. Now, the next form is the converse. In the converse, you switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. So it becomes if Q, then P. Example, if angles are congruent, then they have the same measurement. We switch the if and then parts. So we say, if angles have the same measurement, then they are congruent. Note that the pronoun must be placed in the conclusion part. The next one is the inverse. We go again to the main conditional. In the inverse, we negate the hypothesis and we negate the conclusion. So we say if not P, then not Q. Example, if angles are not congruent, then they do not have the same angle measurements. The last one is the contrapositive. In the contrapositive, you negate Actually, I do actions like this one. Switch. Okay. This is the hypothesis. You negate it. This is the conclusion. You negate it. Then we switch. That is now our contrapositive. Example, if angles do not have the same angle measurement, the negation of this one, then they are not congruent. Let's go back. Conditional, the same. Converse, exchange. Inverse, negate the hypothesis, negate the conclusion. Contrapositive, negate, then switch. Now, let's have a drill, okay? Example, we write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive forms of the following conditional statements. If two integers are odd, then their product is odd. That's the conditional. What's the converse? Exchange. So we say, if two integers, dapat ang noun naa sa hypothesis. If the product of two integers is odd, then the integers are odd. Next, inverse. Negate the first one, negate the second one. Example, if two integers are, we say, not odd or even, then their product is, you can say not odd, or you can say then their product is even. The last one, contrapositive. Negate, then switch. So we say, if the product of two integers is even, that's not odd, then the integers are even. That's not odd. Questions? No questions? Okay, let's have this example. Ready? In your chat boxes, prepare. The statement is, if you are in Valencia City, then you are in Bukidnon. Can you type in the chat box the converse? Type in the chat box the converse. If you are in Valencia City, then you are in Bukidnon. Type in the chat box the converse of the statement. Ready? Okay, we have one. If you are in Bukidnon, then you are in Valencia City. Very good. Switching. Next, inverse. What's the inverse of the statement? You type the inverse in the statement. If you are not in Valencia City, then you are not in Bukidnon. Very good. The next one, the contrapositive. Contrapositive. Invert, negate, exchange. How about the contrapositive? If you are not in Bukidnon, then you are not in Valencia City. Very good. Give yourselves a tap on the back. You got it all right. To recap, here's the answer. Answer. Hindi makita. Okay, now, a conditional statement, but if you notice, some statements sound weird because it's not true, right? Some are false. Now, a conditional statement can be true or false. They say that if you want to prove something, you need so many examples to exhaust. But if you want to prove something wrong, you only need one example. We call that a counter example. That is an example that will make your statement false. So now, if you notice, if this is R, P, and Q, then P then Q will have TF, TT. Our converse will have TTFT. Our inverse will have TTFT, and our contrapositive will have TFTT. Now, what's the significance of this table? Most likely, the conditional statement and the contrapositive statement have the same truth values. You check. So if the conditional is true, then most likely the contrapositive is also true. If you check, the converse and the inverse have the same truth values. So it means that if the converse is false, then the inverse is also false. Now let's try to evaluate, because you see, after writing your converse, inverse, and contrapositive, you also need to check the truth values of this statement. Again, to make it false, you only need one counterexample. Let's start. If two integers are odd, then their product is odd. True, right? Like 3 times 5. Both are odd. The product is 15, still odd. Or 7 times 9. That's 63. It's still odd. And remember, the conditional has the same truth value with the contrapositive. If the product of two integers is even, then the integers are even. Example, 30. Then the integers can, and so sorry. Example, we have 100. So you have 50 times 2. The next one, converse. If the product of two integers is odd, then the integers are odd. If the product of two integers is odd, then the integers are odd. Is it a true or a false? Let me know in the chat box. If the product of two integers is odd, then the integers are odd. It's still true. The next one, inverse. If two integers are even, then their product is even. Example, 4 times 6. The product is still even. So we'll get true for all of that. The next example. Wait first. Give me a moment. Okay, this one. Let's identify the truth value. In the chat box, share with me. If you are in Valencia City, then you are in Bukidnon. True or false? If you are in Valencia City, then you are in Bukidnon. Very good. It's a true. Next, converse. If you are in Bukidnon, then you are in Valencia City. If you are in Bukidnon, then you are in Valencia City. Very good. It's a false. It's possible that I am in Malaybalay, I'm in Bukidnon, but I'm not in Valencia City. Next, inverse. If you are not in Valencia City, then you are not in Bukidnon. If you are not in Valencia City, then you are not in Bukidnon. If you are not in Valencia City, that I'm not in Bukidnon. Example, I'm in Malaybalay. Not in Valencia, right? But am I not in Bukidnon? So it is a false. It's possible that I am in Malaybalay, but I'm still in Bukidnon. The last one, if you are not in Bukidnon, then you are not in Valencia City. If you are not in Bukidnon, then you are not in Valencia City. Of course, I'm not in Bukidnon. So there's no possibility that I am in Valencia City, right? So it is true. If you noticed here, the conditional and the contrapositive have the same truth values, while the converse and the inverse have the same false values. Any questions? This ends today's lesson. Any questions before you'll go to your quiz? Or you can give me a thumbs up if you're ready to take your quiz.